The novelist Hermann Hesse wrote Journey into the Night, the story of a group of men on an expedition. And the hero of the expedition is the servant Leo. Now, as a servant, he only has menial responsibilities. And everything goes well on the expedition until Leo leaves the expedition. Then things fall in disarray, and it has abandoned the mission. They cannot get along without him. They discover later that Leo was one of the sponsors of the expedition, even though he only had menial tasks during it. That he had a servant type of leadership. The greatness of his leadership was found in being the servant, the key to the success. And that's related to today's gospel in many ways. When Christ tells his disciples not to lord it over them, not to make their authority felt. Albert Camus wrote Create Dangerously, in which he talks about how when people accomplish something in their life valuable, it's often based upon their own suffering and their own joys. He goes on to quote Emerson saying that when you find yourself up against a wall, remember there's a door there. Now the door is not for you to escape, but enter into and create dangerously. To be a leader that's a servant is dangerous. And to be a leader as a servant, either way, is dangerous. And for people to follow a servant leader is dangerous. The servant leader somehow knows the unknowable, as Christ knows the unknowable, and can foresee the unforeseeable. Now, in the gospel today, just before this section, the disciples for the third time hear Jesus talk about the Messiah will be a suffering servant, that he'll be rejected, that he'll die. Of course, he will rise. But even though Mark's gospel is centered around these three predictions of Christ, that the Messiah will suffer, be rejected, and die, the disciples still do not understand. They start talking about who is going to be the greatest in the kingdom. And that's when Jesus tells them once more that the greatest in the kingdom will be the servant of all. The one who wants to be first really will be the last. And this is what servant leadership is all about. Yes, to listen to the followers is good, so that you can point out the right direction for them to go in, the goal to achieve. And Christ does that by saying, if you truly want to be a leader, you must be a servant. How important that is in life. Our world desperately needs servant leaderships. They don't need leaders that want to lord it over others, make their authority felt, and do what they want to do. We need leaders that truly will be servants of others, to know what is best for the group, and to somehow teach the group to make that leap of imagination where they begin to see things they did not see. It took a while for Christ to teach his disciples to make that leap of imagination and to see what the Messiah was all about, a servant leader. Do not lord it over them. Do not make your authority felt. If you want to be the greatest, be the servant. If you want to be first, be the slave of all. That is what servant leadership is all about. That is what the world desperately needs. And that's something that each one of us can practice in our own realm, whatever it is. We are there not to serve ourselves wherever we are. We are to serve others. And when we serve others in the right way, we become the true leader like Leo in Hermann Hesse's novel. That really people cannot get along without a servant leader. Things fall into disarray. The expedition is abandoned. And so it is happening in our world today. There are too many leaders, not only around the world that are just serving themselves, but even in our own country. We have too many politicians that are serving themselves. So we are called upon to do two things in life. To pray for the servant leader. And often they're not born. It takes time for them to develop. It took Lincoln time for him to realize how he was a servant of the black people. How he was to follow the advice of Douglas Frederick and bring about that proclamation of liberty. Let us in our own lives free others. Let us become the servant leader. And the servant leader, above all, not only must serve, but must sacrifice the way Christ did.